Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new episode of Wartalk. More specifically, we're going to be looking at the Commander overview of the new set, Adventures in the Forgotten Realm. And I just want to give a giant thank you to everybody who's witnessed my very limited day spoilers for the set. So thank you everybody who watched it. I truly appreciate it. As you can tell, I have a new microphone. This comes courtesy of one of my friends, Alistair, who has, as you know, has been on the channel before on General Warfare and on our games. So a big thank you to him for the new mic. Love it so far and very much appreciate it. As you know already, today is pre-release week and next week will be the official release of Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. So today being Friday is day one of the pre-release weekend. So if this video finds you, maybe you might get some inspiration as to what new commanders you might be building for pre-release weekend or for future deck brews with the set. We have 30 commanders we'll be going through today, some of which I've already covered and a few of which I might have a new spin on. So with that, let's get started. Let's tackle all 30 of these commanders. Alright, so we're gonna get started with our first commander, Tmat. This is a 7/7 legendary dragon god for 2 and Wooburg, 2 white, blue, black, red, and green. With flying, whenever Tmat enters the battlefield, if you cast it, search your library for up to 5 dragon cards not named Tmat that each have different names. Reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. So, you may not know this, but I've already made a deck tech on Tmat a while ago when she was first spoiled. However, I'm gonna go over a brief little summary of Tmat and my thoughts on her. So I say this is a pretty funny tutor on a commander, basically allowing you to tutor up 5 dragons into your deck and put them into your hand. The dragons you need to win the game, obviously. And Tmat herself is a 7/7 flying dragon, so not only does she have evasion from ground creatures, but she's also going to be hitting for big. So 3 swings with her could mean game over for your opponents. Next, we're going to be looking at Xanathar, Guild Kingpin, a 5/6 for 4 blue and black for a legendary beholder. At the beginning of your upkeep, choose target opponent. Until end of turn, that player can't cast spells. You may look at the top card of the library. Anytime you may play the top card of their library, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast spells this way. So I've already covered Xanathar in my first day spoilers for Adventure in the Forgotten Realms. However, again, I'm going to go over it very quickly. This is basically like Send Triplets Light, where Send Triplets actually allows you to cast the spells from their hand, and they're not allowed to interact with their abilities. How Xanathar works, it's 1 color less. Xanathar only allows you to play the top card of their library, and you can spend mana as any color you cast those spells. The main difference between those is Xanathar allows you to color fix your mana, where Send Triplets you need to have your color fixing right away. Now that being said, as a commander option, Xanathar actually seems like a really fun one to very much control the boards, control your opponents, and to get away with a lot of random funny stuff. And for the most part, I can see Xanathar going around tables quite frequently, especially with it being just released. And I just want to see what kind of decks Xanathar players will build with this, I should say. Next, we're going to take a look at Volo, Guide to Monsters, a 3/2 for 2 green and blue for a legendary human wizard. Whenever you cast a creature spell that doesn't share a creature type with a creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard, copy that spell. So a copy of that creature spell becomes a token. Volo allows you to have non-tribal synergies, so you can effectively make blue-green good stuff. Simic good stuff is not a bad option considering there's a lot of really good cards in both of those colors, and considering that color pairing is one of the strongest color combinations on the tables usually. Now, Volo allows you to make token copies of each one of those creatures, and you can run stuff like Mimic Vats in there, clone spells, and the sort. With that, there's a lot of really good cards you can copy, especially some of their bigger bombs and such, and for the most part, you can be getting a lot of value with Volo, creating token copies and having ETB triggers trigger twice, especially with the tokens. Next, we're going to look at Minsk, Beloved Ranger, a 3/3 for green, red, and white legendary human rogue. When Minsk, Beloved Ranger enters the battlefield, create Boo, a legendary 1/1 red hamster creature token with trample and haste. And for X, until end of turn, target creature you control has base power and toughness XX and becomes a giant in addition to its other types, activated only as a sorcery. Now, when I first saw Minsk, I was not very impressed. Just having creating a 1/1 red hamster and just making some creatures base power XX. However, the more I think about it, green and this color combination has a lot of ramp in it. Green is your main supply for ramp. Red has a lot of burn and big stuff, and white itself has a lot of removal. That being said, this color combination, Naya, is no stranger to big stuff. Like in the past, we've had Maya of the Anima decks with big creatures and such. So Minsk allows you to have a little bit of extra advantage. Not to say you're going to be getting creatures onto the battlefield. However, if you're going to be attacking into your opponents, you're going to be raising their base power and toughness, especially if you have smaller scale creatures and you have smaller creatures that you can pump and make their base power and toughness 9s and swing in. And Boo is also adorable. No one's going to deny that. We want more Boo. Next, we're looking at Drizzet Dowerden. It's 3/3 for 3 green and white for a legendary elf ranger with double strike. When Drizzet Dowerden enters the battlefield, create Gwenwivar, a legendary 4/1 green cat creature token with trample. Whenever a creature dies, if it has power greater than Drizzet's power, put a number of +1/+1 counters on Drizzet equal to the difference. Drizzet, I remember it being spoiled with one of the first few commanders in this set, Drizzet being one of them, and we're going to be looking at the other two in just a matter of minutes. Now, Drizzet, I'm not very sold on, first and foremost, as it being a viable super big commander option. Now, allowing it to get the +1/+1 counters back onto it does definitely give it a more advantage than others, and especially with white allowing you to protect Drizzet as much as you can. It's good. However, you're going to be relying on a lot of big creatures, and you're going to be relying a lot on sacrificing or creature dying abilities. Now, with that, it could deplete your board and it could leave Drizzet very much vulnerable to a lot of different attacks and different removals, not just creature removal but board wipes and such, considering Drizzet doesn't have protection on themselves. Next, we're looking at Oswald Fiddlebetter, a 2/2 for 1 and a white legendary gnome artificer with the ability Magical Tinkering, which is 1 white and tap it to sacrifice an artifact. Search your library for an artifact card with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacrifice artifact's mana value, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle, activate only as a sorcery. I've already discussed Oswald Fiddlebetter in a previous video before, and I still stand by my thoughts on it. Oswald is very, very powerful. It's artifact pod, meaning that it runs a lot of sacrifice abilities. Normally pod is like birthing pod decks and such, so where you're sacrificing creatures to get bigger creatures on the field. In this case, it's artifacts. So you're basically podding away some small artifacts to get bigger artifacts onto the field until you get your value engine on board. As a solo commander, I would love to see how this deck is being built. Maybe I'll do one for an upcoming Brewing for $50 episode. I'm not going to tell you right away. And I really like this guy. I want to see what kind of decks Oswald will be put into and what kind of decks you players would build around. So if you have Oswald Fiddlebetter decks already built, leave them in the comments down below, because I would love to see what kind of decks you guys built with them. Next, we're looking at Brunor Battlehammer, a 5/3 for 2 red and white legendary dwarf warrior. Each creature you control gets +2/+0 for each equipment attached to it. You may pay 0 rather than pay the equip cost of the first equip ability you activate each turn. Brunor lends itself back to old school Boros mentality, where it's only about power and not much else, and you're focused on equipments a lot with him as well. Allowing your first equip ability to be 0 rather than have to pay an absurd amount of mana for it means that Brunor can be suited up super big, or one of your other big creatures can be suited up super big. And if you're gonna be running a lot of equipment-based cards, like Valduk is a very good one, Stoneforge Mystic if you're going out of budget. These are just a couple of ideas. This would very much lend into Brunor being a very powerful commander, especially what kind of equipments you're running in there. If you're running Blackblade from Forges or Sword of Feast and Famines, any of the like. I feel like Brunor could be a very fun commander, especially since the Zero Equip ability activation is really strong. And you know what? Maybe I'll make a Brewing with $50 episode on this guy too. Like I said, all in due time. Next, we're looking at Callan, Recluse Painter, a 1/2 for black and red, legendary human elf bard. When it enters the battlefield, create a treasure token, and other creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them for each mana from a treasure spent to cast them. So with Callan, a lot of your synergy is revolving around treasure tokens. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not sure if black and red have the most dedication to treasure tokens just in and of themselves. I feel like if you're going to be putting Callan in a deck, you're going to be putting him in the 99 rather than having him on the battlefield themselves. Then again, I could be wrong on this. However, Callan in red, there's a lot of treasures. It's just the black. I am not 100% sure how much dedication to black treasures black has, I should say. I don't know how the additional +1/+1 counter will fare for most creatures if you're going wide with these kind of decks. Next, we're looking Delina Wild Mage, a 3/2 for 3 and a red, legendary elf shaman. When Delina Wild Mage attacks, choose target creature you control, then roll a d20. If it's between 1 and 14, you create a tapped and attacking token of that copy of that creature, except it's not legendary and it has exile this creature at the end of combat. And if it's between 15 and 20, create one of those tokens and roll again. So I've already covered Delina in one of my older videos, just to say, and Delina seems like a really fun commander to play around, especially if you're going to be manipulating as much dice rolling as you can. There's been a lot of dice rolling abilities that you can manipulate as well in this set. And with Delina, I really feel like you can go all out with this one, especially depending on what kind of creatures you're playing. I feel like a lot of creatures with Delina decks would need to be ETB creatures, like Molten Primordial would be a good example of one. And you're making copies of them. Basically, a lot of the time, if you're making copies of them, they either have to be big creatures or they have to have significant enter the battlefield abilities. And with Delina, I would love to build a deck around her. So I'm saying this right now, expect a Brewing with $50 episode on Delina. Next, we're looking at Grasslax, Illithid Scholar, 3/2 for 1 blue, legendary horror. When a creature you control becomes blocked, you may return it to its owner's hand. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, draw a card. I'm not very much sold on this card. I don't really feel this is going to be a very solid standout commander, either as a threat on board or in the 99. I don't really feel like Grasslax would be a big selling point to build a deck around. I mean, Grasslax is not terrible, not gonna lie, like the added effect to bounce your creatures if they become blocked so they don't die to combat damage, and drawing cards for each one of your creatures dealing combat damage to players. That's pretty good. I'm just not really sold on the fact that like this is gonna be changing the tides of war in mid-game. I really feel like Grasslax would be a card in the 99 rather than it being a standalone commander themselves. Next, we're looking at Old Nawbon, a 7/7 for 5 green legendary dragon with flying. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, create that many treasure tokens. This is an amazing card I really want to see as a commander. However, I really feel this would be much better in a commander deck rather than as a commander. The reason why I'm saying that is because green is already very much ramp filled, and the fact that you're going to be making more mana to cast more stuff is just a little bit one more, aka redundant. So I would love to see Old Nawbon in more inside a commander deck with more of an attack focus, because Old Nawbon is really strong, especially with those treasure tokens. I would love to see Old Nawbon in a Scion of the Ur Dragon deck. I know it's kind of like my go-to commander for dragons. However, it is not a bad option considering you get to tutor up, you get to put old Nawbon in the graveyard, and whenever Scion deals damage, you're creating that many treasure tokens for more activations. Next, we're looking at Astrak, the Archlich. For 2 and a black, a 5/5 legendary zombie wizard. Whenever Astrak the Archlich enters the battlefield, if you haven't completed Tomb of Annihilation, return Astrak the Archlich to its owner's hand and venture into the dungeon. Whenever Astrak the Archlich attacks, for each opponent you may create a 2/2 black zombie creature token unless the player sacrifices a creature. So most people already know about Astrak's combo potential with Allurin and Rooftop Storm, giving you infinite dungeon venture triggers. Now, most of the time you're going to be playing Astrak in the 99 rather than him having to be the main focus of a deck, since the potential is much better in the 99 rather than as a standalone commander. The second ability is not like the worst, I would say. However, it's not going to be turning heads to your side of the field unless you have him in your 99, of course. Next, we're looking at Ebb and Death Dracolich, a 5/2 for 2 black, flash flying Ebb and Death Dracolich enters the battlefield tap, and you may cast Ebb and Death from your graveyard if a creature not named Ebb and Death died this turn. Now, I've already expressed how much I love this card, especially the fact that it has flash. And if you know me, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know how much I love the flash mechanic. It is probably one of the best mechanics that Wizards has come up with, allowing you to play your cards at instant speed rather than having to wait till your turn. So you could effectively just you could sacrifice one of your creatures and then play Ebb and Death from your command zone, and it's just coming to play tapped. And then at the end of your opponent's turn, then on your turn, Ebb and Death will be available to attack. I love this card. It's very pricey right now, looking at going at $12 at the current time. However, upon release, the prices will most likely go down in price. So we'll see if Ebb and Death raises in price or lowers in price. And if it lowers in price, expect a Brewing with $50 episode on Ebb and Death. Next, we're looking at Hannah Bashar, Ruin Seeker, a 2/3 for 1 white and blue legendary human wizard. Room abilities of dungeons you own trigger an additional time. So with Hannah Bashar, this is the best we're going to be getting for a commander with venture into the dungeons next to Astrak. So Hannah Bashar allows you to double the amount of dungeon venturing you're doing in your deck. So most of the time you're going to be spiking that entire deck up with a lot of venture into the dungeon cards. You're going to be doing double triggers on those, and I feel like this is just getting a lot more value with your commander, and especially with this new mechanic being out, you're getting a lot more advantage, and you're getting a lot more value from each venture rather than not having her as commander. Next, we're looking at Imrith Desert Doom, a 5/5 for 3 blue legendary dragon with flying. Imrith Death's Doom has ward 4 as long as it's untapped, and whenever Imrith deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Then if you have fewer than 3 cards in your hand, draw cards equal to the difference. Imrith is interesting, a 5/5 for 5 flying, and will have protection 4 basically whenever it's untapped. So as long as you can give Imrith Vigilance, it has that protection on itself. Now the second ability, allowing you to draw a card when it deals combat damage, not bad. The 3 card thing is a little redundant. However, allowing you to draw cards and it giving itself protection is a very strong option. It's pretty balanced, I would say. I'm not sure if I would ever do a brewing with this card. However, I would like to see more decks of Imrith come out. Let's see what you have. Let's see what kind of decks you build. So leave them in the comments down below if you built an Imrith deck, and show me what you've got. Next, we're looking at Gretchen Titchwillow, a 0/4 for Simic, which is green and blue, legendary halfling druid. For 2 green and blue, draw a card. You may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. I've already covered Gretchen in a previous video. However, this is basically Growth Spiral or Explore on a body, except 2 extra for either one of those. Depending on how much mana you have with Gretchen, you can effectively go infinite and infinitely draw draw your entire deck out. I'm kind of skeptical about its long-term play, considering you already have a lot of commanders with this ability. Tatyova being the first one, AC being another one I can think off the top of my head that revolve around landfall cards. And Gretchen would fare very well in the 99. However, if you've already built a Gretchen deck, I would love to see it. So put it in the comments down below. And next we're going to be taking a look at Orcus, Prince of Undeath, a 5/3 for X, 2 black and red for a legendary demon with flying and trample. Whenever Orcus enters the battlefield, you choose one. Either each other creature gets -X until end of turn, you lose X life, or you return up to X target creature cards with total mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. They gain haste until end of turn. So with Orcus, you can effectively board wipe. You can board wipe whenever he enters the battlefield, or you could just start recurring all your creature cards for combos. I like this card as a commander itself. I personally think this would be a prime commander to build around, considering the X ability is very, very strong. However, it already being 4 mana and you already have to pay X could be limited, especially if you just want a body on the field. And if Orcus has died multiple times, it's going to be a lot harder to cast Orcus and to get the extra abilities off him as well. So with Orcus, you have to be very mindful about how much ramp you put in this deck, because I believe he needs a lot of ramp. Next, we're looking at Varus, Silvery Moon Ranger, a 3/3 for 1 green legendary human elf ranger with reach and ward 1. Whenever you cast a creature or planeswalker spell, venture into the dungeon. This ability triggers only once each turn, and whenever you complete a dungeon, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. I'm going to be honest with you, I just expect him to be in the 99 most of the time if you're ever going to be playing Varus. However, if you do end up playing Varus, I do feel like the one-time venture into the dungeon is kind of limited with how much you're able to do. Now, of course, mono green with enter the battlefield abilities could be broken with dungeon venturing triggers. So it does cap off at 1, and whenever you complete a dungeon, you create a green wolf. I mean, it's a bit of a reward, I guess, but it's not an amazing reward ultimately. And considering we only have 3 dungeons and those are interchangeable, every time you're casting a creature, you're only going to be casting like 1 creature each turn. Are you just going to be casting 1 creature each turn, just adventure once? It doesn't seem very, very powerful. Next, we're looking at Shestra, Death's Whisper, a 1/3 for 2 black and green legendary human elf warlock with Bewitching Whisper. When Shestra, Death's Whisper enters the battlefield, target creature blocks this turn if able, and the second ability, Whispers of the Grace. At the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card. I'll be honest, it's not an amazing card ultimately. I don't really feel like a lot of people will be playing Shestra decks at all. I could be wrong, and I could be seeing an influx of this card in multiple tables and multiple groups. However, to me personally, I don't think this is just a justifiable card to run a commander with. It's very limited because you're only having 1 creature block this turn if able, and if a creature died, you pay 2 life to just draw a card. I mean, there's already many Golgari decks, Golgari commanders, I should say, that do these abilities much better. Next, we're looking at Targnar, Demon Fang Gnoll, a 2/2 for green and a red legendary Gnoll with Pack Tactics. Whenever Targnar, Demon Fang Gnoll attacks, if you attacked with creatures of total power 6 or greater this combat, attacking creatures get +1/+0 until end of turn, and for 2 red and green, double Targnar's power and toughness until end of turn. Where do I start with this guy? Considering I am mostly a Gruul player, I don't find this being a very enticing card to play. You already need a lot of support just to get his first ability off, and it's just a minor boost. And for the double target power, I would expect it to be have much more higher power than just 2 if you want to double it. I would have imagined this card being for 1 more mana, just it being a 5/2 and the same abilities, it would be much better off. This card design to me just completely puts me off from playing him ultimately. Next, we're looking at Nadar, Selfless Paladin, a 2 and a white for a legendary Dragon Knight, 3/3 with Vigilance. Whenever Nadar, Selfless Paladin enters the battlefield or attacks, venture into the dungeon. Other creatures you control gets +1/+1 as long as you've completed a dungeon. So Nadar, I feel, is a perfect card to be putting into the 99, especially in dungeon venturing decks, especially in decks like Hamna Bashar, where you're going to be doubling the amount of dungeon venturing triggers. Especially with Nadar, every time he enters the battlefield, you can always blink him and get that dungeon venturing ability off, and other creatures you control get an additional boost every time you complete a dungeon. So it's just a minor boost. However, Nadar, you can get the extra value by just blinking him all the time, depending on what deck you're putting him in. Next, we're looking at Asmodius, the Archfiend, 6/6 for 4 black legendary devil god with Binding Contract. If you would draw a card, exile the top card of your library face down instead. 3 black to draw 7 cards, and 1 black to return all cards exiled with Asmodius the Archfiend to their owner's hand, and you lose that much life. So I've seen this being circulated as the next Griselbrand. I mean, I could see it, especially with that 3 black mana ability to draw 7, even though you're exiling it. I do feel like Asmodius is kind of limited because you can always respond to the return all cards exiled activated ability. You can always respond by killing Asmodius, and those cards are permanently exiled. And that being said, I mean, it's still kind of good. I could definitely see Asmodius being a very high up there commander if given the right support and the right deck constructed. I'm very skeptical about how it would run ultimately because it costs 6 mana to play Asmodius, and then every time you're drawing a card, you're exiling it, and it is easy prey to be removed. Next, we're looking at Zalto, Fire Giant Duke, a 7/3 for 3 red, a legendary giant barbarian with trample. Whenever Zalto deals damage, venture into the dungeon. So Zalto, I feel, as a mono red dungeon venturing commander, I mean, kind of limited, not gonna lie. I mean, he has to be the one to deal damage in order to venture into the dungeon, and I don't remember there being a lot of red dungeon venture cards in there. So I mean, he's very limited. I don't really see him doing too much ultimately, especially since he's 7 damage, and most of the time he's just going to get removed from the field every time you try to attack with him to venture. Next, we're looking at Trelasara, Moon Dancer, a 2/2 for green and white legendary elf cleric. Whenever you gain life, you put a +1/+1 counter on Trelasara, Moon Dancer, and scry 1. This is just an amazing life gain, not only general, but card ultimately. If you're running green in your life gain decks, put Trelasara in there because not only do you get +1/+1 counters on her to beef her up, but you also get to scry, so you get to see get that card advantage as well to see what kind of cards you're going to be getting on your next turn, and you can always hide them under the bottom of your library. If you don't like the top card, you can always scry it to the bottom. This is just an ultimate card I would definitely love to get my hands on, 1 and 2, see if I can make a deck list with her to put out for you guys. Okay, we're rounding off the last 6 commanders, and we're going to start off with one of the best cards I've seen from this set ultimately. It's Inferno of the Star Mounts, a 6/6 for 4 red legendary dragon that can't be countered. It has flying and haste, and for red, Inferno of the Star Mounts gets +1/+0 until end of turn, and when its power becomes 20 this way, it deals 20 damage to any target. Now, I say this is probably my favorite to come out because not only is it absolutely scary as an uncounterable flying haste dragon, but the ability to deal 20 damage to any target could eliminate one of your opponents immediately out of the game. Now, Inferno, I would definitely run either as a commander themselves and just get double creature's power and just boost them up with the fire breathing effect, or I'd even run them in any dragon deck like the Dragon or my pet card, apparently, Scion of the Dragon. Or you can even run her in a Tmat deck and just tutor the Inferno up and just lay waste to your opponents this way. I love this card. I'm planning to get my hands on one of these. Next, we're looking at Faradeth, Devil's Chosen, a 3/3 for 2 blue and red legendary Tiefling Warlock with Dark One's own luck. Whenever you roll 1 or more dice, Death, Devil's Chosen gains flying and menace until end of turn. If any one of those results was 10 or higher, you draw a card. With Death, I do feel like a lot of the dice rolling mechanics would be good with a deck like this, considering we've only seen a couple of dice rolling commanders. Delina being the only other dice rolling commander. So even if you're putting Delina in a Death deck, Death already gets flying and menace, so it gives them evasion, I should say. And if you're going to be suiting them up with like big scary auras or equipments or anything of the sort, then Death could easily just take out a person very quickly. And with the evasion that they have for flying and menace, it's going to be very hard to block a Death deck. And the extra card draw on it is kind of nice. It's more whenever you roll a dice, the evasion itself is the selling point to this card. Next one we're going to be looking at is the Tarask, a 10/10 for a 6 and 3 green legendary dinosaur. The Tarask has haste and ward 10 as long as it was cast. Whenever the Tarask attacks, it fights target creature defending player controls. Now, I've seen everywhere that the Tarask in this format has been significantly nerfed, meaning that the card has been powered down significantly. I don't really see that, considering it has haste and ward 10 every time you cast it out of command zone. And whenever it attacks, on the first turn it comes out, whenever it attacks, it can fight a target creature and its defending player controls. It already is a kill stick in and of itself, for one, and two, ward 10 is just something your opponents are not going to be able to touch. They can't singularly target remove the Tarask as long as you cast it from the general zone. Although a 9 mana dinosaur for 10/10 is very, very risky to play around. If you can somehow get the Tarask on the field and give it haste and potentially double strike and such, you're easily going to be winning a game right off the bat. Next, we're looking at Curley of Baldur's Gate, a 1/3 for blue and black, legendary human elf rogue. When Curley of Baldur's Gate deals combat damage to a player, that player loses 1 life and mills a card. Then you gain 1 life and scry 1. Whenever you attack, you may pay 2. If you do, target creature can't be blocked this turn. I've already mentioned Curley in one of my older videos, and I keep the same sentiments about it. I don't really like this commander. I don't think this is going to be turning heads at any point, and a lot of Dimir mill decks already do much better abilities than this. Take the Scarab God, for example. The Scarab God is probably one of the most known mill commanders in the meta today. And it doesn't have any drawbacks to it, for one. Two, it doesn't really look, it's only, you mill 1 card with Curley instead of milling X. I don't think I like this card at all. I don't really see this as a strong commander option. Prove me wrong, everybody. We're going to be coming down to the last 2 commanders today. And the first one is Barrowing of Clan Under. A 3/3 for 2 white and black legendary dwarf cleric. Whenever Barrowing of Clan Under enters the battlefield, venture into the dungeon. Whenever Barrowing attacks, return up to 1 creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield if you completed a dungeon. So Barrowing follows along with the dungeon venturing mechanics, the unique ability in the set ultimately, and I want to like this card. It's just, I think Barrowing is trying to do something that Alicia does, but significantly worse. Every time it's only whenever Barrowing enters the battlefield. It's not whenever he attacks either that you can venture into the dungeon. So you're going to be relying on a lot of flicker, or you're going to be relying on recasting Barrowing on a lot of times and spending a lot of mana on him. And the second ability, like I mentioned, Alicia does that much, much better. And the last card we're looking at today is Icing Death, Frost Tyrant. A 4/3 for 2 white legendary dragon with flying and vigilance. Whenever Icing Death Frost Tyrant dies, create Icing Death Frost Tongue, a legendary white equipment artifact token with equipped creature gets +2/+0. Whenever equipped creature attacks, tap target creature defending player controls and equip 2. I just see this being an accessory card to a lot of equipment decks. I don't really see this being a very strong commander that you're going to be seeing that's going to be changing the meta ultimately. That's saved for some of the cards that we've already mentioned before, like Astrak would be a meta changer. I could definitely see Asmodius being a meta changer. I don't see Icing Death being as one though. It just creates a kind of insignificant equipment. If you want to play this card, put it in Equipment Matters deck, but just don't play it as Commander, please. It's not that great. And that's it. That's all 30 options for commanders in Adventure in the Forgotten Realms. What do you guys think of the new set? How do you guys feel Wizards did with the crossover between Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons? And are there any suggestions for new videos you would like to see? Leave a comment in the comment section down below. As always, you can check out my socials. I have Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram, all linked in the show notes down below. I post every Friday. I'm back to my regular schedule of Fridays. However, I'm going to tweak it a little bit. Fridays, 8 a.m. Eastern. I'm going to be removing the premiere option with these because I just want to try something new. And so it's going to be every Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard. So I want to get everybody on board with this. So with that, we're trying something new. Let's see how well this goes. And for all new viewers, my name is Stefan. I'm a content creator here on YouTube for Magic the Gathering, for gameplay, for deck brews, and for discussion videos like this on new commander and commander options. So if you have any questions or if you have any ideas for a new video, don't be shy to hit me up on my socials or leave a comment down below. I'll get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And until then, have a good pre-release weekend. Enjoy Adventure in the Forgotten Realms when it becomes released, and I'll see you guys next Friday. Until then, cheers everybody.